Now let's start with today's story. My name is Mason Smith, and I'm a Marine. I've been through a lot in my life, but nothing could have prepared me for what happened in Afghanistan. It's been a whirlwind since that day, and sometimes I still can't believe I made it out alive. Let me take you back to that moment, the moment everything changed. It was a routine mission, or at least as routine as things get in a war zone. We were flying low over the rugged terrain, the chopper's blades slicing through the dry, dusty air. I remember the hum of the engine, the vibration of the metal beneath my boots, and the way the horizon seemed to stretch forever. My team was quiet, focused. We'd done this 100 times before, but you never let your guard down. Not out here. I was sitting near the door, my rifle across my lap, staring out at the landscape below. The sun was starting to dip, casting long shadows across the mountains. It was almost peaceful in a way. But then, out of nowhere, it happened. Incoming! Someone shouted, and before I could even process the word, the world exploded around us. An RPG, rocket-propelled grenade, hit us square on the side. The impact was deafening, a violent jolt that felt like the sky itself had cracked open. The chopper lurched, spinning wildly as smoke filled the cabin. I remember the sound of metal tearing, the sickening crunch of the rotor blades struggling to keep us airborne. "Hold on. We're going down," the pilot yelled, his voice strained but steady. I gripped the edge of my seat, my heart pounding in my chest. The ground was rushing up fast, too fast. There was no time to think, no time to do anything but brace for impact. The crash was a blur of noise and pain. I remember the sensation of being thrown, the world flipping upside down as the chopper slammed into the dirt. Everything went black for a moment, and when I came to, the cabin was filled with dust and the acrid smell of burning fuel. My ears were ringing, and my body felt like it had been hit by a truck. "Smith, you good?" One of my teammates shouted, his voice muffled but urgent. I tried to respond, but the words caught in my throat. My back was on fire, a sharp, searing pain that shot through me every time I moved. I could barely feel my legs. "I'm hit," I managed to choke out, my voice barely above a whisper. "I can't move." The next few hours were a haze of adrenaline and agony. My team got me out of the wreckage, and I was airlifted to a medical facility in Pakistan. I spent 2 weeks there, drifting in and out of consciousness, surgeries and painkillers blurring the line between reality and dreams. The doctors told me I'd broken my back, but they were hopeful. With time and rehab, they said, I'd walk again. I'd get my life back. When I was stable enough, I was flown back to the States. The Wounded Warrior Rehab Center was closer to home, so I decided to recover there. Being near family felt like the right call. I needed them, especially Linda. Linda, my wife. We'd been married for 3 years, and I thought we had a good, solid relationship. But now, I'm not so sure. When I came back home, it was a mix of emotions. Relief, exhaustion, and a strange sense of unease I couldn't quite put my finger on. My parents were there, along with Linda and my brother Jared. They all stood in the doorway, smiling, but there was something in the air, something I couldn't quite place. Maybe it was the way Linda's smile didn't quite reach her eyes, or the way Jared shifted uncomfortably when I looked at him. But I pushed those thoughts aside. I was home, and that was what mattered. "Welcome back, son," my dad said, clapping a hand on my shoulder. His voice was steady, but I could see the worry in his eyes. My mom hugged me tightly, her grip almost too much for my still healing body. "We're so glad you're home, Mason," she said, her voice trembling. "We've been praying for you every day." Linda stood a little further back, her arms crossed over her chest. She smiled, but it felt distant. "Hey," she said softly, stepping forward to give me a quick hug. "It's good to have you back." Jared, my younger brother, was the last to greet me. He's a big guy, always has been. A football player, built like a tank, with a grin that could light up a room. But today, his smile seemed forced. "Hey, bro," he said, pulling me into a careful hug. "Glad you're back in one piece." "Thanks, man," I said, wincing a little as he patted my back. Good to be home. Once the welcome was over, we all moved inside. My parents helped me settle into the guest bedroom on the ground floor. Climbing stairs was out of the question for now, so this was the best option. Linda didn't offer to move downstairs with me, though. She stayed in our bedroom upstairs, which struck me as odd. I mean, I get it. I'm not exactly in great shape right now, but still, it felt cold. What really threw me, though, was Jared. He wasn't staying in the guest room downstairs with me. No, he was staying in the adjacent room upstairs, right next to Linda's bedroom. I didn't say anything at first, but it nagged at me. Why was he staying up there? It didn't make sense. Later that evening, after my parents had left and I was alone with Linda, I finally brought it up. She was sitting on the edge of my bed, flipping through a magazine like everything was normal. I took a deep breath and asked, "Hey, why's Jared staying upstairs? I thought he'd be down here with me." Linda didn't look up from the magazine. "Oh, he's been helping around the house while you were gone," she said casually. "You know, with the yard work, fixing things, that kind of stuff. He'll be leaving in a week or so, once you're settled and feeling better." I frowned. Helping around the house? Since when does Jared do yard work? He's never been the handyman type. She shrugged, still not meeting my eyes. "Well, he's been stepping up. It's been a big help, honestly. I couldn't have managed everything on my own." Something about the way she said it didn't sit right with me. But why's he staying upstairs? Wouldn't it make more sense for him to be down here with me? Linda finally looked up, her expression calm but guarded. "Mason, it's just easier this way. He's been using that room for a while now, and it's not a big deal. You're going to be fine down here, and he'll be gone soon anyway." I wanted to press her further, to ask why it felt like she was hiding something, but I didn't. Maybe it was the exhaustion, or the pain meds, or the fact that I didn't want to start a fight on my first day home. So, I let it go. But the unease in my gut didn't go away. My parents left shortly after, promising to check in on me the next day. As they walked out the door, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Linda's explanation didn't add up, and Jared's presence in the house felt wrong. But I didn't have the energy to dig deeper. Not yet. For now, I was just trying to focus on getting better. But as I lay there in that quiet, empty room, I couldn't help but wonder what was really going on in my own home. I had been wheelchair-bound for weeks, but I was finally starting to get the hang of it. After 3 grueling weeks of rehab, I was proud of the progress I'd made. The first time I managed to make it to the toilet on my own felt like a victory worth celebrating. The doctors were pleased too. The tests showed my back was healing better than expected. They said I was getting stronger every day. But no amount of physical therapy prepared me for the night everything fell apart. I'd missed being close to my wife, really close. Since my injury, we hadn't shared a bed, and I hated it. The distance between us felt unbearable, like a gaping canyon that I couldn't cross. So, that night, I decided I'd try. I wanted to surprise her, show her I was making progress. Maybe we could start finding our way back to each other. Getting out of bed was slow and awkward, but I managed. My legs trembled with each step, and sweat broke out on my forehead, but I pushed through. The stairs loomed in front of me like a mountain, each step a reminder of how weak I still was. But I gritted my teeth and kept going, one painful step at a time. Finally, I made it to the top, breathless but determined. Her door was just a few feet away. I leaned against the wall, trying to steady myself, my heart pounding in my chest. That's when I heard it. Moaning. Laughter. I froze, my mind refusing to process what my ears were telling me. It couldn't be. Not her. Not in our house. My legs felt like they were made of lead, but I forced myself forward. My hand trembled as I gripped the doorknob and slowly pushed the door open. The scene inside hit me like a freight train. Jared, my brother, in bed with my wife. They didn't notice me at first, too wrapped up in each other. "You," I managed to choke out, my voice thick with rage. They both jerked their heads toward me, shock plastered across their faces. "Mason?" she gasped, scrambling to cover herself. Jared's expression shifted from surprise to something I couldn't quite place. Maybe guilt, maybe defiance. "It's not," Jared started, but I didn't let him finish. Adrenaline surged through me, numbing the pain in my legs. I rushed forward, my fists clenched, every ounce of betrayal fueling my movements. "You bastard," I growled. Before he could react, I grabbed Jared and punched him hard in the gut. The fight ended as quickly as it started. Jared was bigger, stronger, and faster. Especially in my condition. I was still recovering, still fragile, and I didn't stand a chance. I remember swinging at him, my fists clumsy and weak, fueled by nothing but raw anger and betrayal. He dodged easily, his movements sharp and calculated, and then he hit me. Hard. The pain exploded in my ribs, my back, my gut. I crumpled to the floor, gasping for air, and everything went black. When I woke up, I was in the hospital again. But this time, it wasn't a war zone that had put me here. It was my own brother, my own wife. A cop was standing by the door, his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. It took me a moment to recognize him. Timothy. We'd grown up together, played football in high school, even double-dated a few times back in the day. But the look on his face now wasn't one of friendship. It was pity. "Mason," he said, stepping closer to the bed. You're awake. I tried to sit up, but the pain in my ribs and back stopped me cold. Tim, I croaked, my voice hoarse. What the hell is going on? Why am I here? Timothy sighed and pulled up a chair, sitting down heavily. He looked tired, like he hadn't slept in days. Mason, your wife filed a restraining order against you. She says you attacked her last night, and Jared stepped in to protect her. According to her statement, you fell down the stairs and injured yourself. I stared at him, my mind racing. What? That's not what happened. Jared. He was the one who attacked me. He's been staying in my house, sleeping in the room next to my wife. And when I confronted him, he was sleeping with Linda. I stopped. The way he'd looked at me, like I was nothing, like I was already dead. Timothy held up a hand, cutting me off. I know, Mason. I know. But the injuries you've got, they don't match her story. You've got 3 broken ribs, a ruptured testicle, and you've re-injured your back. That's not from falling downstairs. That's from someone beating the hell out of you. I felt a surge of hope. So you believe me? He hesitated, his jaw tightening. I believe there's more to this story, yeah. But right now, Linda's statement is the one on record. And until we can prove otherwise, the restraining order stands. You can't go back home, Mason. Not right now. I can't go home? That's my house, Tim. My wife. My life. And she's just lying about everything? Timothy nodded, his expression grim. I'm sorry, man. I really am. But until we can sort this out, you're stuck here. And even then, it's not going to be easy. I clenched my fists, the anger and frustration boiling over. What about my parents? Have you talked to them? They'll vouch for me. They know I'd never hurt Linda. Timothy looked away, his face darkening. I tried, Mason. I called them, but they've refused to talk to you. So far, they're siding with Linda and Jared. The room spun. My parents? My own parents? They'd always been there for me, always had my back. And now they were turning their backs on me? It didn't make sense. None of this made sense. Tim, I said, my voice breaking. What the hell is happening? Why is everyone acting like I'm the bad guy here? He didn't answer. He just sat there, his hands clasped in front of him, his eyes full of regret. And for the first time in my life, I felt truly alone. I spent the rest of the day numb. The betrayal gnawed at me, relentless and cruel. By evening, there was a knock at the door. My parents, Brenda and Alistair, stepped inside, their faces heavy with discomfort. They moved toward the 2 visitor chairs near my bed and sat down stiffly. I met their eyes, but they quickly lowered their gazes or turned their faces away. Cowards. My throat tightened with bitterness. You guys knew, I said flatly, breaking the silence. My mother shifted uncomfortably, her fingers twisting in her lap. Mason, she began hesitantly. It's been going on since you were injured in Afghanistan. The air felt like it had been sucked out of the room. My jaw clenched as I fought to stay composed. Linda was down, my mother continued, and they were too emotional. They ended up making a mistake. I shot back without hesitation, my voice sharp with disbelief and rage. And you're here covering up their mistake? You betrayed me, Mother. Brenda flinched as though I'd struck her. Before she could respond, my father spoke up, his tone steady but detached. What's done is done, Mason. We can't fix it. He leaned forward slightly, his expression unreadable. If you want a divorce, let me know. I'll talk to them. I'll convince them to drop the charges and not demand any alimony or settlement. The casual way he spoke about dismantling my life made my blood boil. Why are you still talking to them? I demanded, my voice rising. Jared and Linda ruined my marriage. They almost killed me. Yet I see that you have no anger for them. I leaned forward, my eyes boring into theirs. Am I adopted, Mrs. Smith? My mother's face crumpled, tears spilling down her cheeks. She started to cry with that statement. Leave, I said coldly. I don't want to see you again. Brenda's tear-streaked face crumbled further, but I didn't flinch. Alistair gave me a long, unreadable look before standing up and helping my mother to her feet. Without another word, they walked out, the door closing softly behind them. The next day, Linda showed up at the hospital. I wasn't expecting her, not after everything that had happened. But there she was, standing in the doorway of my room, looking like she'd just walked out of a soap opera. Her eyes were red, her face pale, and she was clutching a tissue like it was some kind of lifeline. For a split second, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then it all came rushing back. The betrayal, the lies, the way she'd stood by and let Jared destroy me. My blood boiled, and before she could even open her mouth, I screamed for the nurse. Get her out of here. I shouted, my voice echoing down the hallway. I don't want to see her. She's a cheating wife who sleeps with her husband's brother and then betrays him by filing false charges. Get her out. Linda's face crumpled, and she started crying, big, dramatic tears that probably would have worked on me a few weeks ago. But not now. Not ever again. The nurse rushed in, looking flustered, and gently but firmly escorted Linda out of the room. I didn't care how much she cried or what she said. She could rot for all I cared. Later that evening, Tim came back. He looked exhausted, like he'd been running on fumes for days. He pulled up a chair and sat down, rubbing his face with his hands before finally looking at me. The restraining order's been lifted, he said, his voice flat. Linda dropped it. She's also filed for divorce. I couldn't help it, I smiled. A cold, bitter smile that didn't reach my eyes. Of course she did, I said. They want to be the bigger person, don't they? Let me go. Act like they're doing me a favor. But I'm not going anywhere, Tim. They're not getting off that easy. They'll face the consequences for what they've done. Tim sighed, leaning forward and resting his elbows on his knees. Mason, listen to me. Just get out of this mess, buddy. You're still young. Walk away. Cut ties. There's no need for revenge. I stared at him, my jaw tightening. No need for revenge? Are you kidding me, Tim? They destroyed my life. My wife. My brother. My own parents won't even talk to me. You think I'm just supposed to let that go? He put a hand on my shoulder, his grip firm but kind. I get it, man. I do. But revenge? It's not going to fix anything. It's just going to drag you down with them. You've already been through enough. Don't let this consume you. I wanted to argue, to tell him he didn't understand, that he couldn't possibly know how it felt to have your whole world ripped out from under you. But deep down, a part of me knew he was right. Revenge wouldn't fix anything. It wouldn't heal my broken ribs or my shattered trust. It wouldn't bring back the life I'd lost. But that didn't mean I was ready to let go. Not yet. The divorce didn't drag on as long as I thought it would. Tim hooked me up with a lawyer, a no-nonsense guy named Carl who didn't waste time with small talk. Carl made sure the process was smooth, almost too smooth. Linda didn't fight for much, which surprised me. No alimony, no settlement, nothing. The house wasn't even in my name. It was my mom's, and Jared was living there now. So, there was nothing to split. I walked away with my dignity, at least, even if I was still limping. You got lucky, Carl said during one of our meetings, leaning back in his chair and tapping his pin against the desk. She didn't push for anything. Could have been a lot messy, eh? Lucky? I snorted, shaking my head. I don't feel lucky. I feel like I got hit by a truck. Twice. Carl gave me a sympathetic look, but he didn't argue. He knew better. He'd seen the medical reports, the photos of my injuries. He knew what I'd been through. The physical recovery was the hardest part. The fight with Jared had set me back months in rehab. My back was a mess again, and the broken ribs made every breath feel like a knife to the chest. But somehow, I endured. Day by day, session by session, I pushed through the pain. I had to. There was no other option. Tim checked in on me regularly, always with that same look of concern. You're looking better, he said one day, leaning against the doorframe of the rehab center. Still limping, but you're moving better. Thanks, I said, wiping the sweat from my forehead. Feels like it's taking forever, but I'm getting there. You will, he said, his tone firm. You're stubborn as hell, Mason. If anyone can bounce back from this, it's you. I wanted to believe him. Some days, I did. Other days, it felt like I was just going through the motions, like I'd never really get back to where I was before. But I kept at it. I didn't have a choice. 11 months later, I was finally back at my best. Well, as close to my best as I could get. I'd lost some weight, but I was leaner now, stronger in a different way. My body had changed, but so had I. I wasn't the same person I was before Afghanistan, before the crash, before Linda and Jared. And maybe that was a good thing. My mother tried to reach out to me multiple times. Calls, texts, even showing up at my apartment unannounced. But I refused to see her. Every time her name popped up on my phone, I felt a mix of anger and sadness that I couldn't quite untangle. She'd made her choices, and I'd made mine. One day, she showed up at my door, knocking softly, her voice trembling as she called my name through the wood. Mason, please, she said, her voice breaking. I just want to talk. I'm your mother. I love you. I stood on the other side of the door, my fists clenched, my jaw tight. You lost the right to call yourself my mother when you sided with them, I said coldly. Go home. She didn't leave right away. I could hear her crying, her sobs muffled but unmistakable. Part of me wanted to open the door, to let her in, to forgive her. But the other part, the bigger part, couldn't forget, couldn't forgive. Eventually, she left, and I didn't hear from her for a while after that. Then came the call from my father. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up the phone. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the hope that he'd finally say something that made sense. But I should have known better. "Mason," he said, his voice gruff and impatient. "You need to stop this nonsense. You should be thankful we got you a clean divorce. Linda could have taken you for everything." I felt the anger rise in my chest, hot and sharp. "Thankful?" I snapped. "You think I should be thankful? You pimped your own son, Mr. Smith. You bought Jared a hooker with my dignity. So don't stand there acting like some kind of saint. You're not Buddha. You're just a coward because you were spineless enough to call spade a spade. Tell me, what my brother did was the right thing to do." He said. I never supported his actions. I shot back. "You never condemned them as well. So stop this act of a big father. You are dead to me." There was a long silence on the other end of the line, and for a moment, I thought he'd hung up. But then he spoke again, his voice low and furious. "You don't get to talk to me like that, Mason. After everything we've done for you." "Done for me?" I cut him off, my voice rising. "You didn't do anything for me. You turned your back on me when I needed you the most. So don't call me again. Ever." I hung up before he could respond, my hands shaking with anger. I didn't need them. I didn't need any of them. They'd made their choices, and now I was making mine. And my choice was simple: never call me again. A few months later, I stood in the sterile, fluorescent-lit exam room of the base clinic, shirt off, my scars on full display. The doctor, a wiry, no-nonsense captain with a clipboard, poked at my back like I was a lab specimen. "Range of motion's better," he said, scribbling notes, "but your lumbar spine is still compromised under stress. You're not cleared, Smith. 2 more months of rehab. Minimum." I clenched my jaw, staring at the wall. 2 more months. 2 more months of being trapped in limbo while my unit prepped for deployment without me. "Doc, come on," I said, forcing a grin I didn't feel. "You're telling me I can't dodge bullets because my back's quirky now?" He didn't laugh. "Bullets don't care about your sense of humor. Neither do RPGs. Come back in 8 weeks. I visited my barracks and the boys were happy to see me. The guys rallied around me that night at the barracks, passing a bottle of cheap whiskey like it was a sacrament. Garcia, a hulking machine gunner with a skull tattoo peeking above his collar, slapped my shoulder. "Hell, man, maybe the universe is doing you a favor. Now you got time to fix that other mess." He winked, the unspoken Linda and Jared hanging in the air like smoke. Henderson, our sniper quiet medic, leaned forward, his voice a gravelly whisper. "I know a guy. Mexican, makes soups. Discreet. You want to make him disappear? Just say the word." The room went still. For a heartbeat, I let myself picture it. Jared's smug face vanishing into a barrel of toxic sludge, Linda's lies silenced forever. Then I snorted, shaking my head. "And waste all that suffering I've got planned? Nah, dying's too easy. I want them to feel it." Garcia barked a laugh, raising his drink. "Attaboy. Slow burn's better anyway." But later, when the others staggered out, Henderson lingered. He'd always seemed too much. "You ain't really gonna do something stupid, are you, Sarge?" I stared at the empty bottle, my reflection warped in the glass. "Stupid's my middle name, Doc." "Nah, your middle name's Loyalty. Or it was." He stood, towering over me. "Don't trade it for revenge. That's a one-way ticket to a cell. Or a coffin." I didn't sleep that night. I paced my tiny apartment, my mind a war zone. Go guns blazing. Catch Jared at the gym, break his knees with a tire iron, torch the house. But every fantasy crashed against the reality. I'd lose my stripes, my pension, the only life I had left. Yet the rage didn't care. It pulsed in my fists, my teeth, my ruined back. They took everything. By dawn, I'd made no plan, no grand scheme. Just a vow, hissed at the cracked bathroom mirror as I popped painkillers. I have to get even. How? No clue. But I would. 3 days later, I was going to meet Grace, a fellow Marine, a warrior and hard woman. The bar was quiet for a Thursday. Just a few lifers nursing beers in the corners and a jukebox humming old Creedence Clearwater. I chose it for the shadows. Garce walked in like she owned the place, her boots clicking against the sticky floor, her dark hair pulled into a tight bun. She slid into the booth across from me, her sharp eyes scanning my face before she even sat down. "You look like shit," she said, flagging the bartender for 2 whiskeys. "Neat. No ice." Like someone pissed in your protein powder. I smirked, but it felt hollow. You heard about the medical eval? She leaned back, arms crossed. Heard you failed. Also heard you're not exactly broken up about it. The bartender dropped our drinks. Garce knocked hers back in one go, her gaze never leaving mine. I took a slower sip, the burn steadying me. It's not just the eval, I said finally. It's everything. Her eyebrow arched. The wife? The brother? I nodded, tracing the rim of my glass. And the parents. The whole goddamn circus. Garce leaned forward, elbows on the table, her voice dropping. I've heard whispers, Mason. Pieces of it. But I want to hear it straight. All of it. So I told her. Every ugly detail. The crash, the rehab, Linda's lies, Jared's fists, the divorce, the way my parents turned their backs. The words came out raw, like pulling shrapnel from a wound. Garce didn't interrupt, didn't flinch, just listened, her jaw tightening when I got to the part about waking up in the hospital with Timothy's pity hanging in the air. When I finished, she signaled for another round. Mierda, she muttered. That's some next-level betrayal. Yeah, I said, staring into my glass. And I'm done letting it fester. Garce swirled her fresh whiskey, her gaze turning tactical. You want out of the pain? Or you want out of the people? I met her eyes. I want them to feel it. All of it. She nodded, slow and deliberate, like she'd been waiting for me to say it. I know someone, she said. Not a trigger puller. A problem solver. The kind that makes shit unfold. I tilted my head. Legal? She snorted. You want legal? Call Jack. You want results? The air between us thickened. I could have backed out then. Should have. Maybe. But the rage in my chest was a live wire. What's the play? Garce leaned in, her voice ablade. You meet him. You talk. He'll show you options. But listen. She grabbed my wrist, her grip iron. You walk in. You better be ready to walk all the way. No half-stepping. I held her stare. I'm ready. She released me, scribbling a number on a napkin. Tomorrow, 8 p.m. Dock 14, the old fisheries warehouse. Ask for El Fantasma. I pocketed the napkin, the paper crisp against my fingers. Why were you doing this? Garce smirked, tossing cash on the table. Because familia doesn't end with blood, and you? Your family. I thanked her and left. The next day, I went to the old fisheries warehouse. It smelled like salt water and rust, the kind of place you wouldn't want to be caught in after dark. I asked for El Fantasma, and a worker, grizzled and quiet, led me through the maze of crates and tangled nets. We came to a small, dimly lit office where a short man was sitting behind a desk. His face was framed by a thick mustache that seemed too big for his head, and when he saw me, he grinned. Grace called. You need help, he said, his voice smooth. Almost too smooth for someone who looked like he'd been through more than a few rough patches. I nodded, keeping it business. He raised an eyebrow, clearly amused. You want no killings, right? I nodded. He smiled and said, that's a shame. A little blood can make things interesting. I forced a tight smile, but kept my tone steady. No blood. Just need to handle some family stuff. My brother, my parents. I want them handled. But no one dies. El Fantasma leaned back in his chair, tapping his fingers on the desk. He studied me for a long moment before speaking again, his eyes narrowing slightly. You know, for an athlete, it's very important to have a good, clean reputation. Big thing after the Me Too movement. Public opinion? That can destroy someone faster than a bullet ever could. I leaned forward, trying to keep my impatience in check. What's your point? He smiled again, this time colder. How do you tarnish someone's reputation, Mason? I didn't answer right away. He didn't expect one. He continued, his voice calm but deliberate. You drag them through the dirt. Get them caught in a scandal. Make sure every little piece of their life gets torn apart in front of everyone who ever trusted them. I nodded, seeing where he was going. And you can do that? El Fantasma chuckled softly. Of course I can. I've done worse. Much worse. He stood up, walking around the desk with a confidence that only came from knowing he could make things happen. But no death, right? Right, I confirmed. He stopped in front of me, his expression turning serious. I'll take care of everything. 2 days later, my burner phone buzzed with a blocked number. I knew who it was before I answered. Watch the news, El Fantasma said, his voice a rasp of static and smoke. Then the line went dead. I grabbed the remote, my hands steady but my pulse roaring in my ears. The screen flickered to life, some primetime talking head mid-sentence. Breaking news tonight involving local football star Jared Smith. Police confirm he was arrested following a violent altercation outside a downtown bar, where he was allegedly involved in a disturbing sexual misconduct scandal. Let's go to Maria Lopez at the scene. The camera cut to a shaky shot of Jared's BMW, driver's side door hanging open like a broken wing. A woman in her 50s, gray hair wild, eyes volcanic, was screaming in Spanish at the cops holding her back. Behind her, a younger woman, maybe 19, sat wrapped in a foil blanket, her face streaked with mascara. According to witnesses, the reporter said, Jared Smith allegedly coerced the young woman into his car after buying her drinks at the bar. Her mother, who had been tracking her daughter's location via phone, arrived moments later and physically confronted Smith. Bystanders joined in, and police say Smith sustained minor injuries before his arrest. The victim claims Smith attempted to assault her, though Smith's lawyer denies all allegations, calling it a setup. On screen, Jared limped out of the precinct in cuffs, his face a mosaic of bruises and scratches, that all-American smirk wiped clean. The camera flashed, etching his humiliation into pixels. The burner buzzed again. Satisfied? El Fantasma's tone was flat, like he'd read a grocery list aloud. He'll walk? I said, staring at Jared's perp walk. Rich white boy with a lawyer? They'll slap his wrist. A dry chuckle crackled through the receiver. The girl's mother works cleaning at the DA's office. Her cousin's a detective. The arrest? That's the preview. The trial? He paused. That's where his life becomes hell. I swallowed hard, my throat sandpaper. And the girl? A waitress. Single mom. Student. Jared's type. A beat. She'll testify. So will the mother. And the security footage? It's very convincing. The screen cut to Jared's mugshot. Eyes bloodshot, split lip, his jersey number photoshopped into a prison stripe meme. Trending already. The line died. I sank onto the edge of the bed, the remote still clutched in my hand. Garce texted seconds later. Saw the show. Encore's on you. I didn't answer. Just watched the loop of Jared's downfall, the ticker at the bottom of the screen relentless. From local hero to pariah, community calls for justice for alleged victim. The cops had arrested Jared, but the real fun just started. A day later, my mother and father started calling. I refused to answer. 3 days later, Linda called. I did not answer. The next morning, the pounding on my door was relentless, like they thought they could hammer their way back into my life. I almost didn't answer. Almost let them rot out there in the hallway of my shitty apartment complex, with its peeling wallpaper and the faint stench of microwave noodles. But curiosity's a bitch. I yanked the door open, and there they were. Mom, Dad, Linda. A trifecta of betrayal, huddled like refugees in the dim hallway light. Mom's eyes were swollen. Linda's hands cradled her stomach like she was already auditioning for Mother of the Year. And Dad stood there like a sentinel, his jaw set in that same righteous stubbornness that made me want to punch walls as a kid. What do you want? I said, blocking the doorway. Mom shoved past me, Linda trailing like a ghost. Dad lingered, as if waiting for an invitation. I didn't give him one. Mason, please, Mom begged, her voice cracking. Linda's pregnant. She needs help. I leaned against the wall, arms crossed. The apartment felt smaller with the minute. A studio littered with protein bars, rehab schedules, and a single folding chair I'd stolen from the gym. And? Linda stepped forward, tears streaking her mascara. It's yours, Mason. The baby. It's yours. The words hung in the air like a bad punchline. I stared at her stomach, then back at her face. Mine? I snorted. You expect me to believe that? After Jared? Mom clutched her purse like a lifeline. The timeline matches. Mason, you were still together when you were busy screwing my brother? I cut in, my voice sharp enough to slice steel. When you lied to cops. When you let him break my ribs. Dad finally stepped inside, slamming the door behind him. Enough. This isn't about you. It's about that child. It needs a father. I looked at him, really looked, at the man who'd taught me to throw a football, who'd pinned medals on my dress blues, who'd sat stone-faced when I told him Linda and Jared had gutted me. Now here he was, playing preacher. A father? I said, tilting my head. You mean like you? The guy who disowned his son for catching his wife in bed with his other son? That kind of father? Linda sobbed harder, her hands trembling over her stomach. Mason, I'm sorry. I was scared. I was scared? I laughed, cold and hollow. You were scared when you lied to the cops? When you let them think I was some wife-beating monster? Or were you scared when you spread your legs for Jared? Mom gasped. Mason, language. This is your child we're talking about. I turned to her, the rage in my chest white hot. You don't get to play grandma now. You picked your side. All of you did. Dad stepped closer, his finger jabbing the air. You will not abandon your responsibility. You're a Marine. I snapped. Thanks to him. And you know what Marines don't do? Raise another man's bastard. Linda flinched like I'd slapped her. It's yours, she whispered. I leaned in, my voice a venomous whisper. Sorry, Mrs. Smith, but the lies end here. You know it. I know it. It is not mine. Even if it is, which it's not. You really think I'd let you near a kid of mine? You'd poison it. Turn it into another lying, backstabbing. Mason, Mom shrieked, collapsing into the folding chair. This isn't you. You're better than this. I looked at them, Mom crumbling, Dad red-faced, Linda clutching a baby that'd never be anything but a weapon to her, and something inside me snapped. I started laughing. Since you guys are being so absurd, let me give you another absurd suggestion, I thought. I couldn't hold it in anymore. Mr. Smith, I said, looking at him dead in the eyes. Why don't you divorce Brenda and marry Linda? The kid gets a father, and you get a new wife. Mom gets whatever she wants for the kid. As far as I'm concerned, you guys are dead to me. My voice was cold now, biting. Now get the hell out of here, or I'll call the cops. They froze for a moment, processing what I'd said, and then the room erupted into chaos. Brenda started screaming, her face turning bright red as she pointed at me. You think you can just tell us what to do? She shouted, her voice high-pitched with rage. This is our family's business, not yours. I didn't flinch. I just reached for my phone and dialed 911. Within seconds, I had a cop on the line. I gave him a brief summary of the situation, leaving out nothing, no matter how uncomfortable. Luckily it was Tim who arrived in minutes, his patrol car screeching to a halt outside my house. He was quick to get to the door, his hand on his holster as he entered. Everyone out, Tim said, his voice stern. Parents, Linda, out. Now. There was a long, tense silence, and then my mother's voice broke through. This is not over, she spat, glaring at me as she grabbed Linda's arm and turned to leave. I didn't say a word. Just watch them go. Tim turned to me, giving me a firm nod before heading out himself. Jared was tried, but of course, nothing stuck. He was put under probation due to the lack of evidence. The whole thing should have been over, but the girl's mother blew up on social media, calling the judgment famous Killing the Unknown. That's when the tide turned. The public sided against Jared, and within a week, his sponsorships were pulled, his contracts with the club vanished. He was out on the street. Then, Linda filed a lawsuit for child support against me. I couldn't help but laugh at it. This whole thing felt like a bad joke. I grabbed my phone and called Carl. Hey, Carl, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Linda's filed a child support lawsuit. Carl didn't even sound surprised. We'll go for a DNA test at the first hearing. No worries, Mason. Let's do this the right way. So, we showed up to court, Carl by my side, ready for whatever was coming. Linda looked hesitant, but she still showed up, along with her lawyer, both of them trying to look confident. The judge, a man with a stern face and a presence that commanded attention, looked over the case. I could tell he wasn't buying it. When he spoke, his voice was firm. No DNA testing, no child support, he said, eyes shifting to Linda and her lawyer. The child was never mentioned in the divorce settlement. Linda had no choice but to agree to the DNA testing, and 3 weeks later, the results came back. It wasn't my child. My lawyer and I pushed hard to find the real father. Linda tried to hesitate, looking uncomfortable, but the judge wasn't having it. He cut through her excuses like a hot knife through butter. Ms. Linda Parker, the judge said, his voice hard, you filed a lawsuit against a man for child support, and now he's not the actual father. Do you know the father? If you do, I would request that you tell us who. We cannot force you to do so, but we also cannot stop Mr. Smith from filing a counter lawsuit against you. Linda hesitated again, but the judge's tone made it clear there was no room for games. She declined the DNA testing, and with that, the case was closed. But El Fantasma? He made sure the rumors spread. The gossip about Linda carrying Jared's child went viral. Within hours, the news media was all over it, every channel repeating the same story. They ran the details of how Linda had cheated on her husband, how the restraining order had been filed, and how it had been lifted. They talked about how she declined divorce settlements and how, when Jared went to prison, she had tried to pin the child on me. And then, the final blow. How she had lost her lawsuit after the DNA results came back. Linda was now a pariah in the locality. No one wanted to talk to her, not even my parents. Everyone blamed them for not taking action against Jared. Sure, I could have beaten the crap out of Jared, but that would have turned him into some kind of hero and me into the villain. But right now, it was even better. I was the victim, and he was the villain, along with Linda and my parents. The tables had turned, and they had no idea how bad it had gotten for them. I had my reevaluation for physical fitness again, and this time I passed. No hiccups. With that, I was posted to Saudi Arabia. It felt like a new chapter, a fresh start. Then El Fantasma called me one last time. His voice was low, as always. Mason, he said, Jared's had to sell everything. His car, his house, everything, to pay the mother to keep quiet. So right now, he's dirt poor. Your parents aren't doing much better. They had to sell the house to contribute to his payment. They're still clinging to him, though. I wasn't surprised. Not really. Linda's left town. El Fantasma continued. She's living with her grandmother in Utah now. Probably for the best. I leaned back in my chair, taking it all in. It was strange how quickly everything had unraveled for them. Saudi's a nice place, he added, a slight hint of humor in his tone. If you know where to go. I smirked, not really interested in where he meant, but I didn't want to keep him on the line too long. Thanks for the info, I said. El Fantasma paused before he hung up. Anytime. I set the phone down and exhaled. Saudi Arabia. It was a new beginning, a new place. I hadn't started dating again, but I knew soon I would. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.